Okay, so let's talk about the next topic. UFC 269. Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. This is a big one. Last card of the year, last pay-per-view card of the year that the UFC is putting on. What a stacked card. What an amazing card. December the 11th. And this card is stacked from top to bottom. Let's start from the bottom. Even the early prelims have some great fights. Ryan Hall, who I was talking about before, when I mentioned BJ Penn. I mean, Ryan Hall, we all know the amazing stuff that he does inside of the octagon. Unfortunately, he did have some sort of injury, which I don't recall, and that was one of the reasons why he lost his last fight. We remember all those Eminari rolls and him trying to. It was just crazy, the roles and everything that he was going for. Unfortunately, he hasn't fought that much in the UFC, but he's just an amazing person to watch, and hopefully he can get back on track. Ryan Hall is one of the greats in the UFC when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. Jillian Robertson is fighting first fight, which she always comes to fight, and she's always down for it. Alex Perez, another name. Miranda Maverick is fighting. She's always fun. Eric, your boy Anders, man, I love watching him fight. There's no quitting this guy. I remember the Khalil Roundtree fight, where Khalil Roundtree came out with his Muay Thai style and was just picking apart Eric Anders, and he kept on coming forward. I think it's that football mentality, that mentality that brought him to the top of football. It's just what an athlete, and we all know that he's going to bring a level of excitement just walking forward against his opponent. Okay, so the prelims, we got some really great fights. Tai Tuivasa, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know how much I love Tai Tuivasa. I believe he's been pretty active this year, and getting some great wins in the UFC. Yeah, his last win was against Greg Hardy. That was in July, and then he fought in March 2021, and that was his two fights in 2021. So he's gonna have 3 fights in 2021. So pretty active career thus far in 2021. His last fight against Greg Hardy, I remember everybody was talking about it. I remember walking down the street and hearing some random kids just talk about, hey, you remember that guy, Tai Tuivasa, he took out Greg Hardy? And the way that he did it, the firefight that he went in to with Greg Hardy, it was Greg Hardy's last fight in the UFC after leaving, but he's fighting someone really tough, and we all know he's going to bring it, and hopefully he can have a shoey after the fight. Okay, weirdly enough, Pedro Munoz versus Dominick Cruz, second bout on the prelims. I say weirdly enough because Dominick Cruz, former champion, versus number 8. So number 9 versus number 8. Pedro Munoz is, like Dominick Cruz said, a knockout artist that can strangle you. So, I mean, that's putting it in very simple terms. But the way that Munoz has developed his striking, and to have that knockout capabilities that he has shown in the UFC has been nothing much but spectacular. An all-around fighter in Munoz. Last fight was a loss to Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo, like I said at the top of the show, has had this resurgence at 135 and has been doing amazing stuff. So you can't really say anything bad about a loss to Jose Aldo in this new part of his career. Before that, getting a win against Jimmy Rivera. He got a KO stoppage against Cody Garbrandt. That might have been Cody Garbrandt really wanted to go in the fire with Munoz and getting into a firefight with him, which was very ill-advised. So he lost that one in KO, but Munoz won. And he's facing Dominick Cruz. I mean, the veteran, the former champion at 135, regarded to be one of the greatest fighters at 135. I think he's still, if I really think about it real quick, I think I would still rank him number one of all time at 135. A lot of people are chomping at the bit. You know, even the current champion, Petr Yan, if he keeps on the run that he's at right now, he could quickly rise to dethroning Dominick Cruz as the greatest 135er. You know, even TJ Dillashaw, TJ Dillashaw might have a claim to that. But right now, I still think that Dominick Cruz, with his unorthodox style, his own style that he developed, the education that he brings when he fights, the research that he does on his opponents is amazing. So, unfortunately, due to a bunch of injuries and a bunch of other stuff, he hasn't fought that much. He takes fights here and there. Last fight was against Casey Kenny. He won that via split decision. That was in March of 2021. Before that, he was fighting for that 135-pound belt against Henry Cejudo. And then before that, he was fighting Cody Garbrandt. And that was the reason why he lost the belt originally. Cody Garbrandt put on a clinic against Dominick Cruz, and really went after him. It was crazy. He was even like dancing in front of him and all that kind of stuff. But I think that this fight is an amazing fight. What a treat. You get to watch this one for free on the prelims. Here in Canada, you can watch it on TSN. And what a treat this fight is going to be. The second to last fight on the prelim card. I mean, this one, let's see if Dominick Cruz is able to turn back the hands of time. You know, he's one of those people that really doesn't believe in ring rust, and I hope he doesn't believe in ring rust because he hasn't been fighting all too often, and that's not his fault. But I think you have to have that mentality in you to even do something like this. A person that's been in this game for a very long time, and to take on someone like Munoz, who is a rising star, and not just a rising star, someone that will put your lights out if you give him the opportunity to. So that's gonna be a fun fight. Hopefully everybody can stay safe. Munoz, I mean, he will. There is no niceness when he throws any of his punches. They're all made to land and hit you dead in the chin and knock you out. And we'll see that against the unorthodox footwork when it comes to Dominick Cruz. Will Munoz be able to pinpoint his target? Will he be able to land his shots against Dominick Cruz? There's a lot of tape on Dominick Cruz. I think that's one of the things about him. You know, he was a champion for so long that there's so much tape about this guy, and you're able to study his patterns, even though, yes, they are unorthodox, like I keep on repeating. But the fact is that there's a lot of tape on this guy now. There's a lot of years between that tape as well. So you don't know if he's evolved. You don't know if he's still doing the same repetitions. You don't know if he's doing the same thing over and over again. He might be doing something different in this fight. Okay, so last fight and the main event on the prelims. Man, this card is stacked. We got Josh Emmett versus 50K Dan Ige. Dan Ige had his amazing stoppage win in his last fight I mean, Dan Ige is always fun to watch. The guy that brings that speed advantage to this division. Excuse me, I said his last fight was a win. It was actually a loss to Song Jadong, or Chan Sung Jung. The one that I was referring to was the win against Gavin Tucker, that KO punch that happened at in the first round at 22 seconds. He was the main event, or no, he was on the prelims, I believe. Man, I'm getting a bunch of stuff wrong with this, even though it was I was going nuts when I saw this live. But it was on the Leon Edwards and Muhammad fight. He got that excuse me, he got that win against Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker was on a roll. I mean, he was a big hope for the Canadian MMA dreams, and for Danny Gates to just come in there and take him out the way that he did was pretty amazing. People thought it was going to be a back and forth fight, but Dan Ige took him out. So let's see if he's able to get that bounce back win against Josh Emmett, someone at that featherweight division who, just has that knockout ability, but just keeps coming forward. No matter what, you could throw a kitchen sink at the guy and he'll still walk forward and try and knock you up. Every shot that he throws is with bad intentions. His last win and his last fight was against Shane Burgos. Now, we all know that Shane Burgos does not go down easily. He is someone that is always coming forward, just like him. And for him to defeat Shane Burgos in the way that he did, in a decision win, because we go through the rest of his career, his last 4 fights before that were all KO/TKO. So for him to get a decision win against someone like Shane Burgos, just shows you the depth of his skills. Okay, so let's go to the main event. Main event starts off with a bang with Sean O'Malley. He's fighting number 15th ranked Pavia. Excuse me if I butchered that name, but anyways, weirdly enough, he was ranked number 15, but Sean O'Malley was talking about how he wasn't ranked at one point and how he was taken off the rankings. Now he was an unranked fighter again, but Sean O'Malley, the unranked, undefeated fighter who actually does have a loss, but just keeps repeating the fact that he's undefeated, is opening up the pay-per-view. Now, him and a bunch of people don't really care. They say that they don't care at all, but it's a big deal. The UFC wouldn't put Sean O'Malley at the beginning of this card. By the way, above Dominick Cruz, above Dan Ige, to open up the card with the unranked fighter, to open up a pay-per-view portion of the card with the unranked fighter is really nuts, because it just shows the draw that Sean O'Malley brings, the capabilities that he brings as a fighter. I mean, he's just something special on and off the mic. I mean, with his podcast and the way that he's been fighting, and like even with his last fight, Chris Matinos, dribbling on him and just throwing everything at him. Like it was like the Matrix. And I know it was a late replacement, I believe. And it was Chris's first UFC fight, to my knowledge. And it was just tough for Sean O'Malley to get a beat on him. Trained for one guy, another guy came in. And it was weird because he did win that fight. He went all 3 rounds, but I believe Herb Dean, if I'm not mistaken, stopped the fight in the third round at 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Weirdly enough, should have let it go. I think he could have let it go. I mean, if you're gonna stop that fight, you should have stopped it a long time before that. You already let this thing go through. Now let the guy have some you know respect, some class. Let him finish the fight. But that was taken away from him. But Sean O'Malley did get that TKO win. Really excited for that fight. I mean, I think that the big news here is not the fact that Sean O'Malley's fighting on this card. I think it's that he's taking the place of some UFC veterans. Okay, so then Cody Garbrandt is making his 125-pound debut at flyweight, facing the New Zealand-born Kai Kara-France. This is a big deal. Cody Garbrandt has talked about this for a long time. He had a horrible bout with COVID that put him on the sidelines for a while. And what a way to enter the division and face Kai Kara-France. Kara-France, he's part of that same camp that Israel Adesanya is part of, and City Kickboxing there, and he is nobody to mess with. I mean, Cody Garbrandt, former champion, and Kai Kara-France is taking him on. I mean, a lot of people are talking about how diminished Cody Garbrandt might be in this fight because he's cutting that weight down to 125. But I think you got to remember that, Cody Garbrandt, he was knocking out 135ers. And what is he going to do against the speedy flyweights here? And I think Kai Kara-France is perfect for this. Last fight, he won it by KO punch at UFC 259 in Las Vegas. He won it in round number 1. Before that, Brendan Royal, he lost that due to submission choke in Abu Dhabi, I believe. And, don't kill me if I'm wrong, but that one, Brandon didn't make weight. I'll have to double check that, but I'll have to double check that. But I remember that there was some sort of confusion or something at the time, or it might not have been for that fight. But Kai Kara-France is always here to go after it, and he's facing the former bantamweight champion, who has been on a string of losses. His last win was that devastating KO punch, that he did that wind up punch against the cage and knocked his opponent out, and it was crazy. It was right at the bell. It was at 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the second round. Like, the bell rang right when he was collapsing. Before that, or right after that, he lost his fight against Rob Font, who we all know is an amazing fighter and is someone not to take lightly. I think that Cody Garbrandt, this is gonna be a big splash in this division, because if Cody Garbrandt is able to get through Kai Kara-France, then I think we all know what that means. That means that you're on a fast track title shot. You just have to fight for the title with that name recognition. Former champion in this division, you have to fight for that belt after. And I think that's what this division really needs. And this could have happened a long time before. I remember Cody Garbrandt has been talking about this for a very long time. And I believe his last fight, he wanted to take it at 125, but the opportunity presented itself, and he just took the fight at 135. So this is going to be a really interesting fight. watch out for. Quickly, Jeff Neal versus Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio has been on a roll, number 14 versus number 12, Jeff Neal. The guy's known for his knockouts and the way that he takes out his opponents. It's going to be a fun fight. You understand why it's number 3 on the pay-per-view. Jeff Neal, unfortunately, he's having some issues with the law. His agent says that he's not going to jail or anything for that, for possession of a firearm and having a DUI. And but he's not going to get in trouble for it at all. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how that plays out. I think he put out a statement. I still got to listen to it or read it or whatever it is. But I believe he did talk about it at some point. But, man, just the added pressure of that in this fight is just it's probably immense. It's probably something that, I'm not capable of understanding, because you're fighting in the UFC in front of all this big crowd. And now on top of that, like, people are judging you for this incident. Okay. So fight after that, women's bantamweight title bout, Amanda Nunes versus Julianna Peña. Julianna Peña really believes that she's the one that's going to take out the Lioness. The Lioness has been out for a little while. She had a baby girl. And, Julianna Peña is really hoping that this might be the reason why she'll be able to take that belt away from Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes, she has 21 wins, 4 losses, and 2 or 3 of the losses were before the UFC. Once she joined the UFC, she only lost 1 at UFC 178 in September 27th, 2024. After that, she figured it out. It all started clicking. The fight right after that, she got a TKO win by leg kicks, and the rest, submission, decision, TKO, you name it, she got it. Taking out everybody, taking out the biggest names in the sport: Chris Cyborg, Holly Holmes, Felicia Spencer, Megan Anderson, Valentina Shevchenko, Misha Tate. The list goes on and on. Ronda Rousey. It just goes on and on and on. So for me to imagine that Julianna Peña would take out Amanda Nunes, I mean, if something like that happened and you had a ticket for that fight and you bet on that fight, oh my God, you'd make some coin. Because unfortunately, this is the Amanda Nunes era. Unfortunately for Julianna Peña, fortunately for Amanda Nunes. I think it's going to be a fun fight, but I mean, this is just the era that we're living in. And with any era, there's a point where it ends. So when is that point? We don't know. Sometimes we see this happen where fighters in a tough fight, their next fight after might be the point that they kind of break. They really had to dig deep in themselves and really get themselves out of a tough situation. And that might be the point where they're able to, they're just not who they once were. Okay, so that was that fight. 2 belts on the line. The next one is for the lightweight title. Dustin Poirier is going to take on Charles Oliveira. And I mean, this is one of those fights that we've all been waiting for. It's a fight that I'm sure Dustin Poirier, more than anybody, has been waiting for. Charles Oliveira gaining such momentum in his career, in this later stage of his career, the second half of his career, if you will, and getting that belt, getting the recognition from his peers, everybody talking about how amazing Charles Oliveira has been, and for him to take out Michael Chandler the way that he did with TKO punches and coming out of the storm that Michael Chandler put him in, the storm that he put him in. At one point, it was a little touch and go situation going on, but for him to battle the mental aspect, to really hold himself up and get him navigate himself out of that storm is really special. And before that, taking out the likes of Tony Ferguson. After that fight, Tony Ferguson didn't seem the same. Just the way that his attitude is and all this kind of stuff. And after that fight, he lost to Neal Dariush, and that kind of just sent him down. Before that, he took out Kevin Lee, even though Kevin Lee is not in the UFC anymore. He's still a really tough opponent, and for him to do it as it was one of the first fights in the COVID era. I remember I was so excited to watch that fight because I just wanted to figure out what UFC would be looking like during COVID. And it was so eerie and quiet, and I didn't even think it was possible that a fight could happen without a crowd. And for him to take out Kevin Lee in that fight, man, it really sent him on a rocket ship, because a lot of people took him super seriously after that. And it was just something special. And then for Dustin Poirier to take the two Conor McGregor fights instead of fighting for the title, because it was high probability that if he wanted that 155-pound belt aside or opposed to the Conor McGregor fight, many people would take that 155-pound belt. And he didn't. He went for the money fights. He went for the fights that would give him maximum notoriety, taking out Conor McGregor twice. Once by doctor stoppage, but they mark it down as a TKO. The first time was a TKO. And the first time that we saw Conor McGregor in that situation. Before that, taking out Dan Hardy, lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but who doesn't? And before that, taking out all-time great Max Holloway. For the second time, taking out Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis. No contest with Eddie Alvarez the first time. It was because of an illegal knee. But then before that, taking out Jim Miller, Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, Joe Duffy, Yancy Medeiros, and then just the list goes on and on. But I mean, Cub Swanson is on here. He lost to him, but just having the opportunity to share the octagon with him was probably an amazing way to gain experience. But this guy has been going through the murderer's row, just like his opponent, Charles Oliveira. And he has just been winning and winning. And, he talks a lot, but it's not like he's going on Twitter or anything and talking a whole lot of smack to other fighters. He's someone that lets his hands do the talking. And I know that's just like, one of those weird quotes or whatever that people say all the time. But at the end of the day, both of these fighters have been on this steady grind and just winning and becoming absolutely, you can't say no to this guy. You can't say no to him fighting for the belt. I would love to hear if you believe he shouldn't fight for the belt, That would be an interesting conversation because I don't see a reason why he would not. The way that this guy's been going on this run. You know, he did have his first fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov for that belt. Everybody's lost him. Conor McGregor's lost him. Justin Gaethje's lost to him. That 155-pound title was just taken over by Khabib Nurmagomedov, and nobody else was even able to threaten that throne for the whole time that he had that belt. You know, there was a couple moments where there was a glimpse of hope that you would be able to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov, but it never happened. And now that he's retired, he'll never will. And we got to forget about him now, because this moment is for Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier. Both of these fighters, I think Charles Oliveira will really cement himself as the champion by defeating Dustin Poirier, because a lot of people have Dustin Poirier already their champion. Dustin Poirier is already the guy that you need to beat to become that champion. So I think this is a big fight for both of these guys, big stakes for both fighters. And the reason is just because at the end of the day, people just believe that Dustin Poirier is the automatic champion because he took those two fights against Conor McGregor instead of fighting for that belt. So it's the uncrowned king versus the king. So let's see what happens. Fun fights all around. UFC 269 is an amazing card. What a way to end off the year. And my next topic kind of talks about one of the fighters at 155,